So, during a recent live stream where I just talked about the movie, which of course was a live stream I did before the review, one of the topics I talked about was something that a lot of people have been addressing and talking about. In fact, Clownfish TV, Neon, who went solo for this video, talked about it as well. And that is, the whole Bobby Driscoll situation, controversy in the film. Now, for some of you that may not know who Bobby Driscoll is, he was one of the younger kid actors back in the late 40s, early 50s, and all that Disney would call upon to, play these certain roles. Even though you knew it was the same child actor as before, Disney would basically bring them back in because they were under contract, and I guess it was cheaper for Disney to do. They would bring them back in and they would cast them in another role. That's what they would do. They would cast them in another role. And Bobby was one of those exceptions. And he was essentially the inspiration and I think the voice of Peter Pan from the 1953 classic. Now, the reason I bring this up is because the controversy is a lot of people feel that this movie, Disney, through this movie I should say, was taking a crap and a pot shot untastefully, on Bobby. They were basically taking a pot shot, untastefully and disrespectfully on Bobby. With the way they had portrayed Peter Pan. And a bit of spoilers in here in case you haven't seen it yet, which I'm hoping a lot of you have already done so. But yeah, basically a lot of folks felt that they were taking a shit, excuse my language, God, on Bobby's legacy. Just a way to portray Peter Pan, a character that he helped, bring to life. But how did this all start? Well, just like Clownfish TV pointed out, and I'll provide a link at the end of the video so you guys can check them out, if you will. Neon found something online thanks to I wouldn't say a cohort, but basically a fellow YouTuber or reviewer that he and Geeky are connected with. I think her name is Mama Squid or Mama Squidward or something. Well, this person retweeted one of the original tweets, a thread of tweets that is put out by Twitter handler QG at @2nd_quickie. Or no, it's QG at @2nd_quick. That is his name, or that is their name. And basically, they were not too thrilled with, in their opinion, how this was, basically put together, how this character of Peter Pan was portrayed. And what they said is this, and I quote, I have the thread, as you can hear, I have the thread in my hand, I printed it out. I actually copied and pasted most of it, of what he said and what somebody said in reply that I want to get to as well. But yeah, QG did a whole thread on this situation, and this is what they said. This is the first thing they said on May 20th, this past Friday at 10:05 a.m. This is what they said, and I quote, "So, #Chippendale Rescue Rangers came out today. Let's talk about the disgusting portrayal." Okay, let me reread that. It says, and I quote, "So, #Chippendale Rescue Rangers came out today. Let's talk about the disgusting portrayal of Peter Pan as the villain." That's right. As I mentioned, Peter Pan, a bit of spoilers, he's the villain in this. And yes, it is the same Peter Pan, or at least, that's how it's portrayed, as the 1953 one. Now, so far, at the time that I printed this, it's gotten 1,516 retweets, 194 quote tweets, and 7,110 likes. Right off the bat. That's when he started to begin this. But here's what he says, continuing on, and I quote, "Bobby Driscoll, Peter Pan's original voice actor, was one of the first few actors to join Disney's crew at the age of 5. He got good work through them up to Peter Pan, then had his contract terminated 3 years earlier due to excessive acne making his makeup too difficult." I think they meant later, or it couldn't be earlier because the movie, actually it could be earlier because back then movies took a little longer to make. So I'm assuming they let him go after he did the voice work for Peter, and they would kind of put in the animation to it later on or something. But yeah, let me reread that. He says, and I quote, "Bobby Driscoll, Peter Pan's original voice actor, was one of the first few actors to join Disney's crew at the age of 5. He got good work through them up to Peter Pan, then had his contract terminated 3 years earlier due to excessive acne making his makeup too difficult." Now, I will admit back then, things were different, but even back then that's kind of a low blow by Disney or any studio that hired child actors to work with them on a recurring basis. Just because you get older and you go through puberty and stuff and you start showing those signs doesn't mean that's a reason to let somebody go. They should just incorporate that into the character he's going to be. They should just incorporate that into the character he was going to portray, unless the acne got so bad that it did prove to be way difficult and it made the makeup he was wearing stand out when they would apply it. That's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, even back then they should have been able to either work it into the character he was going to portray, or just tell him, hey, we've got another role for you that's more suited for where you're at right now in life, if you will. Basically give him a different acting role that wouldn't, spotlight him as much because of the issue. But still, it's kind of a low blow for them to do that. Now, QG continues on, and I quote, "After getting terminated, he fell into really bad substance abuse for years and years until dying alone, homeless at the age of 31. So basically, around, hold on for a sec. Let me see something. Okay, so let me reread that and continue on from what they said, and I quote, "After getting terminated, he fell into really bad substance abuse for years and years until dying alone homeless at the age of 31, which would have been in 1968. That's right, 54 years ago. 54 years ago. Now, you might say to yourself, well, that was 54 years ago. Not a lot of people were born back then. The people that worked on the movie probably didn't even know that. And that is true. That is a good reasoning to acknowledge that maybe, as I said before in the previous video, they probably meant no harm. They probably had no idea what they were doing until somebody pointed it out to them, or they probably heard of the backlash coming at them for it. Now, continuing on, and I quote, "At the time of his death, no one recognized him, and he was buried in an unmarked okay, let me reread that, and I quote, "At the time of his death, no one recognized him, and he was buried in an unmarked pauper's grave, in an unmarked pauper's grave, where he still is as we speak." QG continues on. "So the fact that Disney references heavy, we don't give..." Okay, now this is where it gets a little controversial, I think. Continuing on, and I quote, So the fact that in Disney's reference heavy, we don't give care if this is a sale promo, you'll watch it anyways film. They make a grown Peter Pan the villain, along with his motivation being that he was fired from Disney, although they don't say Disney, due to acne, is fucking disgusting. This pic is from the credits. Now, the pic that they show is a picture of, Peter Pan, the grown-up Peter Pan, I guess next to Driscoll's picture or something that says the boy who grew up. I'm not really sure. It just shows, Peter Pan and then like a black and white image that might be Bobby's. I'm not really sure. That says, basically the kid who grew, or the boy that grew up. Continuing on, and I quote, he says, thread over, Disney sucks, don't watch this film under any circumstances, ironic or unironic, it's not worth it. Now he does come back and puts this in, he says, quick side note, I don't want to assume bad faith on the writers. My guess is Peter Pan is supposed to symbolize Disney's problematic past, but the writing was so pitiful that it's not effective at doing that. And then, So basically what he's getting at, and let me reread this a little bit. He acknowledges that Bobby was one of the first actors that Disney hired to join the crew at 5 years old, and that he got enough work through, up till his role as Peter Pan, his voice role as Peter Pan. Then he was let go out of his contract 3 years earlier due to excessive acne, making his makeup too difficult. And again, they could have worked their way around that. They could have put him in smaller roles so that he wasn't, shown as much. His acne wouldn't show so much, even when they applied makeup. They could have figured something out instead of terminating him. But again, this was at a time where in the 50s, 40s, and even the 60s, where as a child actor, if you got too old and you couldn't, continue looking young, or something was causing you to kind of use that or lose that youthfulness, if you will, that youthfulness that you had, studios, no matter if it's Disney, Warner Brothers, MGM, Universal, they will terminate you. They will let you go because you can't fulfill your obligation anymore. And even though it's a disgusting practice back then and somewhat today, not so much, again, these studios, no matter the situation, could have kept these people around and said, hey, we'll put you in smaller roles, we'll hide you here and there, we'll give you a scene here and there or a voice part here and there, and just wait until maybe they get out of that pubic error that they're going through, so that when they're out of it, and let's say they've gotten past the acne stage and stuff like that, they could still have them work for them. They could have still found a way to work. They could have still found a way for those actors and actresses to work for them. But again, this was a different time and place where that wasn't the case, or wouldn't be the case, I should say. Now, as far as him falling into bad substance and drug abuse, yeah, that is kind of on him, because of the fact that he had experience acting, which means he could have easily found work elsewhere. But apparently, whether or not he did, I'm sure he did, it didn't last as long as he was hoping, because, maybe he wasn't, the same Bobby as he was at Disney, and the other studios are like, hey, we can't really use you that much. Like, we'll use you here and there, but we can't use you after that. So I don't know. Now, here's the thing. For Disney to reference the boy who grew up, again, the people that wrote it, and he even does acknowledge this somewhat, but the people who wrote it, Schaefer and all them, they probably weren't alive back then. They probably were not alive. I mean, let's be honest. There is a lot of celebrity deaths that have happened years before anybody that works in the industry today were even born. You know, there are a lot of celebrity deaths that happen even before anybody that's working in the industry, working behind the scenes, writing scripts, directing, producing, whatever, were even born. So they wouldn't know about this unless somebody pointed it out to them. And like I said in the live stream, and I just said here moments ago, I'm sure the Lonely Island Boys crew, when they probably got wind of this, they probably were like, oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't have done that, but it's too late for it. It's too late for it. They can't go back and re-edit and say, oh, no, Peter's not the villain. There's another force behind it. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Or maybe they did know, and that's why they went in the direction of turning Peter into an amalgamation of all these different characters. Who's to say? But here's the thing. Did Disney have to... No, let's look at it from this perspective. Did Disney have to reference it in a way where it would have caught the eye of a lot of people that know about the situation? Or basically a longtime animation fans, Disney fans, did Disney have to go, in that direction? No. Disney didn't have to reference it so heavily or blatantly, as some people put it, to the point that they're getting called out for basically spitting on the grave, if you will, on the legacy of one of the first child actors they had, that they gave the boot to because, he was going through puberty, and that puberty was causing him not to, be the way they wanted him anymore. Did they have to reference it? Not really. They didn't have to reference it at all. They didn't have to reference it at all. But again, the writers may have not known. The writers may have not known. For all they know, the guy that portrayed Peter, or did the voice of Peter, is still freaking alive. For all they knew. For all they knew, the guy was probably still alive until someone gave him word, oh yeah, he's dead. And by then it was too late. Who knows? But again, I don't think they meant any harm or anything. And I think that's what a lot of people have to realize. They did not mean any true harm. Yeah, was it kind of disgusting the fact that they kind of parallel the similarity to what happened with Bobby and what happens with Peter in this film? Is it kind of controversial and disgusting in that perspective? Yeah, maybe. But again, I don't think the writers knew about that until later on. Because as I mentioned, a lot of people that worked on this film and that work in the industry today weren't even alive back then. They weren't. So even though Disney probably unsuspectedly, through the Lonely Island Boys and all that, may have done something controversial that they shouldn't, again, the people working on the film for Disney and Disney Plus, and those working in this industry today, a majority of people, were not alive at that time. They weren't. Now, he does basically say that Disney sucks and that nobody should watch this film no matter what. However, he does come back and say, on a quick side note, that he doesn't want to assume bad faith on the writers. And his guess is Peter is supposed to symbolize Disney's problematic past, but the writing was so pitiful that it's not effective at doing that. And so what he's saying is, even though some of us, like myself, felt that the story, the storyline okay, let me rewind. Okay, even though a lot of us felt that the storyline was decently weaved throughout the film to go along with the satiring, the parodying, the commentary and all that, there are some people, whether they're diehard Ranger fans, which I am, but I don't see it in that manner, this being like a troll job or anything, or is this diehard animation fans, Disney fans, whatever, to them, the way this was wrote, even though I think he's reconsidering it here, reconsidering what he said, even though they, okay, let me rewind. almost lost myself there. But even though, he's changed his mind, it looks like he's changing his mind and all that, what he's pointed out is that in his eyes and anybody else's eyes, the writing could have been done better so it didn't give off these kind of controversial vibes and parallels to Peter's villainous turn in the film and Bobby's unfortunate situation after he was let go. So yeah, they basically say, look, the writing could have been, he's like, hey, look, basically what he's saying is, look, the writers probably did the best job they could do, but they could have done better with the story. Like they could have added a few things here and there so it doesn't feel so controversially blatant or paralleling to a real life tragedy, if you catch my drift. Now, one person though, before QG came back and said something else, one person pointed out this about Peter Pan, about the original Peter Pan story, which everybody's been adapting, and I quote, first off, this is one person, I can't think of the name right now, but this is not QG, this is somebody else replying to QG, but this is what the person replying says, and I quote, first off, Peter Pan in the book is a villain, and is not a nice dude. He literally kills his lost boys on the regular before they grow up, or he kills them when they join the pirates. And this, of course, is referencing the original story when it was first wrote. Because we all know that the fairy tales and everything that get wrote, that Disney sometimes will adapt and try to make more family friendly, the legit OG ones are not as friendly. They're not as friendly. They're not as sing along musical yum yum kind of stuff and all that. The OG legit stories are more darker, dramatic, and sometimes more gruesome than anybody wants to admit. And what the person's saying here in response to QG, I should say, to QG, is the Peter Pan in the original story is not the same Peter Pan as what Disney portrayed. In other words, what I think he's trying to say is, look, maybe what they did is they probably did research, saw that one of the least most popular classic Disney characters, not to be utilized as much anymore, is Peter Pan, in the parks or the shows or whatever. And they probably said, well, you know what? Let's make him the villain, but they probably looked at him and said, you know what? Let's make him the villain, but to make sure they could make him the villain, they probably got the okay by Disney, but maybe somebody brought up the fact of, hey, did you know Peter Pan in the original story is a villain? That was probably all the Lonely Island Boys had to hear was, oh, he is a villain? Oh, then that makes it even better. Now, I'm not saying that's true or not. I'm not saying that's legit or true or not. But in my opinion, they may have been, given some kind of clue in, if you will, as to the fact that in the original story, Pan was a villain. And I think that's what this person's trying to point out here is, hey, you can get upset and have your opinion on the paralleling controversy between how Peter Pan is portrayed in the film and, the real life tragedy of Bobby Driscoll, his voice actor, and one of the first Disney actors since the age of 5. But you need to check your facts and realize that in the OG story that they adapted, Peter was a villain. He was a villain-like character by doing the things that he did. Now, QG does close this up, I should say, by saying, oh boy, this blew up. I guess I'll leave this as an intentional or not this detail greatly. Okay. Let me reread that, and I quote. QG closes it up by saying, "Oh boy, this blew up. I guess I'll leave this at intentional or not. This detail greatly sours the movie. And if nothing else, I think it's a good opportunity to reflect back on Disney's shady past in general, which was likely the goal of this character." So again, he basically gives his opinion, on what he feels is a controversial parallel between the Peter Pan being the villain in the film and the person that portrayed his voice that was let go before the movie was released, Bobby Driscoll, because his acne was making applying makeup to him a lot more difficult, and then afterwards falling into hard times till he passed away in 1968 at the age of 31. Basically going into that detail of how he feels it's kind of disgusting, it's disrespectful and all that. Hey, he has an opinion. Everybody else that feels the same way and shares his opinion have a right to those opinions as well. And when you do watch the movie, you do kind of feel like that there is a connection to it, because when Peter talks about his past, talks about what happened when he was let go, you see him like growing a beard and everything and feeling all alone. And yes, it does feel very parallel in controversy to the Bobby Driscoll thing. It really does. It really does look that way. But again, the excuse, if you want to look at it from that, if you want to look at it from that perspective, the excuse, the get out of jail free card situation, is the fact that the people working on this movie probably weren't even born back then. They probably weren't even alive at that time. And if they were probably just 1-2 years old, sucking on their thumbs and all that. So they probably didn't know. They probably weren't aware of the parallels until maybe they did a few private screenings, and they probably did the world premiere at the El Capitan Theater, and even after, or even in between that and after the release on Disney Plus. I'm sure someone brought it up to them and said, "Hey, this, I want to talk to you guys." They probably pulled Schaefer, Rogan, Sandberg, John Mulaney, I think Mulaney, aside and said, "Yeah, guys, it's a great film. Don't change nothing. We like it, but we want to let you in on a little something, little secret, little dark secret." And I'm guaranteeing Seth is like one of the first to speak up and be like, "Oh, well, what's that secret?" Well, probably not speak up, but ask. Well, yeah, speak up and ask what the secret is. And someone probably told them that the way Peter is portrayed in the film is identical to what happened to the guy that voiced him, that originally voiced him, Bobby Driscoll. And they probably explained the story. And I'm sure, that the Lonely Island crew boys, if you will, along with Rogan, Schaefer, Sandberg, and Mulaney, they were probably like, "Oh shoot, we're going to get a lot of flack for this maybe, or a lot of flack, a lot of backlash for this maybe." And lo and behold, they are. Not a lot, but they're getting some. They are getting some backlash as we speak. Not a lot, but some. Because everybody that's watching it and giving it positive praise, critical acclaim, and all that, they are not pointing out the controversy or anything, because of the fact that, like I said, a lot of people that are working in this industry now, weren't born at that time, and if they were too young to remember. And let's not also look at the fact that even those that were alive back then and are, have been working in Hollywood since that time frame, like let's say Clint Eastwood maybe, is a good example. They probably look at something like this and they're like, "Hey, Disney did nothing wrong. They didn't do nothing wrong with this movie. And back then things were different. And if you were a child actor that, was going through puberty of some kind, and it was changing how you sounded, how you looked, and everything, then Disney had to let you go. Or, Disney and any other studio that employed child actors, they had to let them go because they were getting too old for the roles that they wanted them to be in. And that's a fact. They could point that out, from experience, probably going through it themselves or seeing it for themselves. They can chalk that up to, seeing it with their own eyes and from experience. And then perhaps even turn it around and say, hey, Bobby could have got work elsewhere, but he chose not really to do so, and he has no one to blame but himself for what he fell into. So yeah, there will be some that will come out and say, look, Disney did nothing wrong and everything, and back then things were different. And Driscoll basically has no one but himself to blame for what happened to him. They could use that as a counter argument to what a lot of people are looking at as we speak. They could do that. And that's a fact. That is an absolute fact. But here's the thing. Disney or not, Universal or not, Warner Brothers Discovery or not, MGM, Amazon or not, it doesn't matter, okay? Paramount, Lionsgate, whatever or not, it doesn't matter what studios are out there. Independent or not, doesn't matter. Every studio is known to have done shady things in the past and even currently in the present. And they do whatever it takes to cover their butts. And if it's something that happened way in the past, their hope is that the generation they're catering to right now doesn't even think about it. Or if that generation they're catering to now, basically, is being homeworked and researched and taught, less histories, of these different things that the studios own the rights to. They're hoping that generation doesn't even recall what happened. That basically it's so far in the past that they won't remember, period. That's how studios operate. I mean, even as we speak, there's a lot of shady practices going on right now that they're going to sweep under the rug, or they're going to try to hide as best as they can so that nobody, and I mean nobody, finds out about them, and thus they can continue looking as clean as a whistle. That's the harsh reality of it, folks. That's the harsh reality about it. So when you look at this whole Bobby Driscoll, Peter Pan controversy from Rescue Rangers, you could view it as Disney pissing on, shitting on, the legacy of one of the first child actors who they let go because of acne growing on him and him going through puberty that's causing him to fall into hard times. Getting, a little bit of work here and there, but falling into hard times and then passing away because of such. You can slander them all you want. You can call them out all you want. But here's the thing that gets the people behind this movie off scot-free. Again, they were probably not alive at that time frame. And if they were just sucking on the thumbs, ums and everything, and drinking the mom's milk. And I say that with all due respect. But that's it. That's the only excuse that gets them out of this, because they wouldn't have been aware of it. The only way they could be aware of it, honestly, is if somebody after the premiere, after a private screening, or even after the premiere on Disney Plus, brings it up to them, and that's when they'll probably, maybe realize, ooh, I think we might have to address this. And who knows, maybe they will. And I got a feeling if they do address it, they'll come out and say, look, we meant no ill intention. It's just an ironic coincidence. We do apologize. And we promise that if we ever get a chance to do something like this again with another Disney property, we won't go that direction, or we won't go that far. That's the only thing I can think of that's going to happen is if they do get word about this, they find out the truth, that they're going to make a public apology on camera, maybe a public apologetic statement, you know, with a promise that if they get another chance to do something like this, they won't go, you know, this far with the villain or whatever character that could be similar to someone from the past. And that's about it. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are. How do you feel about this? Do you think people are blowing this whole Bobby Driscoll parallel controversy comparison to the Peter Pan villain and Rescue Rangers out of proportion? Or do you think, you know, maybe they are onto something? Do you think maybe they have a right to point this out? What are your thoughts? Do you think maybe this does kind of expose Disney for being too shady, you know, for its own good, and now it's catching up to them? What are your thoughts? Let me know down below. Comment if you like. Live chat during the premiere, where super chats and super stickers are open. It would be appreciated. The super thanks button will also be activated after the premiere if you want to help donate there. Also, check me out at my BW Roses Discussions podcast, except on Pandora, on all your favorite podcast affiliates, if you will, except for Pandora, like I said. Also, check me out at my Teespring store. Also, check me out at BW Roses on VENMO for content you can't get anywhere else due to copyright reasons. Also, check me out at deviantart.com/BVW1979 and at fanfiction.net/Brian.Walmer.1. That's numeral 1. Also, check me out at patreon.com/BW Roses to support me with a $1, $3 tier. Also, check me out at Venmo at Brian-Walmer. Okay, let me correct that. Let me correct myself there. Okay. What I meant to say is check me out at Venmo at Brian-Walmer-2 and check me out at Cash App at BW Roses 98. So until next time, guys, again, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments and in the live chat. How do you feel about all this? And I'm out.